I'm Paige. Welcome back to my kitchen. You're watching the next episode of Dough It with Paigey. Today we will be making the Brioche Cinnamon Roll Recipe from the cookbook Bread Baking for Beginners by Bonnie Ohara. Now, I've had several people reach out to me this week letting me know how excited they are for this video. I've seen a lot of comments online about these particular cinnamon rolls, and a lot of people seem very concerned that there is no icing on these cinnamon rolls. Now, there is a cinnamon glaze at the bottom of the cinnamon rolls, so when they get out of the oven, you just flip them over and the glaze will be right on top. Now, the cinnamon glaze at the bottom, I do feel like that kind of overcooks in the oven every time that I've tried this recipe. I've talked to a couple of other people who've made the recipe and they agree that it does just kind of get overcooked. Instead, I'm going to be making some homemade icing today, and I'll share that recipe with you guys when we get to that point. With all that being said, let's go ahead and get started weighing out our ingredients. In separate bowls, I start out by weighing out my flour, salt, yeast, and eggs. Now, eggs can be a little bit tricky to weigh out. I usually crack eggs into a bowl on my scale, and I'll whisk them up and pour out any excess into a separate bowl until I get them down to the weight that I need. Then in a large bowl, I'll start out by weighing out my very soft room temperature butter. I'll then add in my sugar and milk. I'll then add my eggs on top of this mixture, and I'll add the yeast on top of everything. And then I'll start whisking this up until it is all combined. Now, don't be alarmed if the consistency is a little bit chunky. That is pretty standard for this initial mix. Just try to get everything as well combined as you can. I'll then add my flour on top of this mixture and the salt on top of the flour. And I'll just jump right in and start mixing this up by hand. If you don't want to get sticky, you can use a wooden spoon or a rubber spatula to mix your dough. I prefer to mix by hand because it really allows me to feel the ingredients and know when they're well combined. To mix everything up, you're just really going to want to try to squeeze the dough, scrape everything off the sides of the bowl, and just continue squeezing until everything feels really smooth and well mixed. Your goal here is to get your dough really stretchy like this. Now that we're done mixing, I'm going to go ahead and let this rest for about 30 minutes so that the flour can absorb some of that water. Alright, it's been about 30 minutes. Our dough is done resting. It's time to go ahead and start kneading it. We're going to start off by turning our dough out of the bowl onto a floured countertop. Okay, I like to keep my dough scraper nearby in case the dough gets really sticky to the counter, but I'll go ahead and just lightly flour my dough and we'll start kneading it. So to knead, we'll just push forward with the heel of our hand, pull the dough back, quarter turn, push forward, pull back, quarter turn. And we'll just continue to do this until the dough has tightened up. For me, that usually takes about 5 to 10 minutes. So again, that's forward, back, turn, forward, back, turn. Again, if your dough is getting really sticky on the countertop, you can just use your dough scraper to release that. Add a little bit more flour. And just continue to knead your dough. Now, when I first started baking bread, I used to be so intimidated and discouraged by sticky dough. I've had a lot of practice kneading and I've learned to kind of get over that. I don't really panic if my dough is overly sticky or anything like that. I also try to avoid using a lot of flour when I knead. I just feel like using too much flour can really dry out your dough. So even if my dough is sticking to the counter like it is right now, I just continue to knead this until it gets almost unmanageable, and then I will release it from the countertop and dust it with a little bit more flour. I found that this gives me a better result when I bake. My dough doesn't end up being as dry, so this is just what works best for me. If I had this scenario going on when I first started baking, I would have been full on panicking, adding just so much flour and just having an overall bad time. So I've just learned to kind of have fun with it and just kind of work with my dough and not get too panicky. Now you can probably tell from the video my dough has really started to kind of form a tight ball. It's not really as slack as it was when we first started kneading it. So that's indicating that it is almost done. Now that this is done, I'm going to go ahead and pop this back into the bowl, and we're going to cover this up with a floured kitchen towel and let this rise for about 2 hours, and we'll come back and see how it looks then. It's been about 2 hours and our dough is done rising. This is what it looks like. Now that our dough is done rising, the book says that we can put this in the fridge anywhere from 2 hours to overnight to allow the dough to kind of stiffen up a little bit so that it makes it a little bit easier to handle. Now this isn't required. You can just go ahead and roll out your dough right now if you'd like to. I'm gonna let mine chill for about 2 hours just so it is a little bit easier for me to roll out. So let's go ahead and pop this in the fridge and we'll come back and check it in a couple hours. So while our dough is chilling in the fridge, we're gonna go ahead and make the filling for our cinnamon rolls. In a bowl, I combine my very soft room temperature butter, cinnamon, brown sugar, and a little bit of vanilla. Alright, so I took our dough out of the fridge and I'm going to go ahead and get this rolled out into a rectangle shape so that we can add our filling. If your dough's a little bit sticky, just add a little bit of flour. I'm going to use the majority of our filling to cover our dough. I'm just going to leave one thin strip uncovered right up here. Now that our filling is spread all the way, I'm just going to roll this up and seal the dough to the farthest side from me. I'm just going to go all along this seam right here and just kind of pinch the dough to seal this seam. Okay, I'm going to use my dough scraper to cut our dough into 2-inch rolls. Okay, as you can see, I got a little crafty and cut these all into different sizes. So it's really going to be an experiment to see how long these cook for and how they come out. So I went ahead and laid some parchment paper into a casserole or a baking dish, and I sprayed this lightly with some cooking spray. I'm just gonna lay each cinnamon roll down just about 1 inch apart and let these proof for about 2 hours. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to be putting that layer of filling underneath my cinnamon rolls like the book tells you to do, just because it does kind of get overcooked every time that I try it. If you want to try that, all you'll do is lay down your parchment or your foil, and you'll just layer a thin layer of filling on the bottom and just lay your cinnamon rolls right on top and let that all proof together. All right, our dough's been proofing for about 2 hours, and here is what our rolls look like. I think they proofed up pretty well. I'm gonna show you how I know that they're done. If you poke the dough and it leaves an indent, that means that it's ready. If you poke it and it springs right back up, it needs a little bit more time. So we're gonna go ahead and pop these into my preheated oven at 375 and let them cook for about 30 minutes. While our cinnamon rolls are in the oven, I'm gonna go ahead and prepare our icing or glaze for the top of the cinnamon rolls. Now again, this recipe isn't in the book. I'll go ahead and provide the ingredients for you guys so you can try this at home if you'd like. We're gonna start off by weighing out 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and then I'll add a splash of vanilla, probably about half a teaspoon. I'll then add 1/4 cup of heavy cream and about 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. I like to add in my powdered sugar according to taste. Again, I only used about 1/2 cup here, but you could go as high as using 1 to 2 cups in this recipe. So if you try this at home, just make your icing as sweet as you like it, and I'll link all of the ingredients and the directions in the description below for you guys. So our cinnamon rolls got out of the oven about 10 minutes ago. Now the book says to wait 30 minutes and let them cool down. I live life on the edge. I am gonna go ahead and jump right in because these look and smell so good. Look at this. These are so good. I am not a huge fan of sweetbreads at all, and these are amazing. I'm so happy I decided to opt out of doing that glaze on the bottom. The cinnamon rolls filling just naturally just kind of seeped out of the bottom, creating this really nice warm layer of the filling, and it's really good. Also, the addition of that icing is exactly what these rolls needed. Overall, I think these rolls turned out really good. Again, I'm gonna go ahead and leave that icing recipe in the description for you guys in case you wanna try that at home. Now be sure to tune in next week because we are going to be making cinnamon raisin swirl bread, and I'm really excited to try that recipe with you guys. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, be sure to subscribe, and thanks again for watching Doughing It with Paigey. I'll see you guys next time. Ready? I'm burning up. Can you turn the AC on? Hate it. What about these rolls? A lot of people are excited. Okay. What did we just say? Whatever, I'll just leave it at that. Is it okay if I itched my nose in the middle of that? Should I talk about that cinnamon glaze burning at the bottom again? I'm gonna say it again. Butter, sugar, milk. Was that good? What do you think? Check it. When? What am I talking about? Guys. Be sure to tune in next week. Hold on.